Hey everyone, if you're diving into Verse Peace, you know just how overwhelming it can be with all the swords to collect. There's a massive grind ahead of you if you want to unlock even a handful of them. But here's the thing, not all swords are created equal. Some are absolute game changers, while others, well, not so much. Today, we're cutting through the noise to give you the ultimate Verse Peace swords guide and tier list to help you focus on the best weapons without wasting your time on the ones that just don't stack up. Trust me, you don't want to waste hours grinding for a sword that won't make much of a difference in your journey. So stick around and I'll break down which swords are worth your effort and which ones you can just skip. Whether you're aiming for raw power or cool abilities, this list will make sure you're picking the right swords for the job. Let's jump into it and level up your sword game in Verse Peace. I'm quickly moving on to the video and I'm ranking swords in Verse Peace. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of tier list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching.
A very small portion of the audience is subscribed to the channel. Please don't forget to subscribe if you like these types of videos. Thanks.
The swords in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Kashimo, Toji, Excalibur, Saber, Yoru, and Katana. Let's talk swords in Verse Peace. And no, I'm not talking about those flashy, overpowered blades that make you feel like a god from the get-go. Instead, we're diving into some of the C-tier swords, the ones that are kind of like the underdogs of the game. You know, they're not terrible, but they aren't going to carry you to victory either. It's like that one friend who tries their best but somehow always seems to fall short. Let's break them down. First up, we have Kashimo. Now, it's got its perks, better than most of the other early game swords for sure, and solid mobility to boot. You can zip around with this one, making it useful when you're just starting out. But don't get too attached, it's still too weak to be viable in the late game, and let's face it, getting your hands on Kashimo isn't exactly easy. You'll need some patience and maybe a bit of luck. So, while it can carry you through the early stages, it's not a sword that'll last the distance. Then there's Toji, which is kind of like Kashimo's little sibling. Better than most early game swords, but it doesn't really do much beyond that. Once you've passed that initial grind, Toji falls off fast. It's still one of the better options when you're just starting out, but just like Kashimo, don't expect it to be a game changer later on. You're gonna need an upgrade if you want to survive the real challenges. Excalibur. Yeah, I know, it sounds like it should be amazing, right? Well, it's not. The range and area of effect are decent enough and it has its moments, but let's be real, it's one of the worst swords in Verse Peace. The damage scaling is absolutely atrocious, so unless you're just enjoying the vibe of swinging it around, it's not going to get you far. Don't waste your time hoping for big numbers, it's a bit of a letdown if you're looking for power. Next up is Saber. It has solid area of effect capabilities, but here's the catch. Just like Excalibur, it's one of the worst swords you can use in Verse Peace. The damage scaling is really bad, and you'll soon realize that even with the decent AoE, it's just not enough to keep up with the tougher enemies. It feels nice to swing, but that's about it. If you're serious about improving your sword game, you'll eventually want to put Saber on the shelf. Yoru. It's one of those swords that you really want to love because, well, it's got the cool factor going for it. Unfortunately, it suffers from the same issues as Excalibur and Saber, absolutely terrible damage scaling. You might get a little enjoyment out of using it for the aesthetic, but when it comes down to raw power, it just can't hold its own. Don't get too attached because you'll be looking for an upgrade soon enough. Finally, we have Katana. Easy to get, sure, but it's arguably the worst sword in the entire game. There's no denying that Katana is pretty accessible, but that's about where its advantages end. If you're serious about progressing in Verse Peace, you'll quickly realize that this sword doesn't do much for you. It's a classic case of quantity over quality. Just because you can get it doesn't mean you should. You'll definitely want to find something better as soon as you can. And that's a wrap on the C-tier swords. They might have their moments in the early game, but if you're looking to scale up and tackle tougher challenges, these guys just won't cut it in the long run. Keep an eye out for the next tier of swords that will help you level up your gameplay. The swords in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Shusui, Maki, Stark, Rengoku, and Grimmjow. You know how it goes. Just when you think you have found the sword, another one shows up and steals the spotlight. Let's dive into the B-tier swords in Verse Peace because honestly, they deserve some love too. They might not be endgame beasts, but they have their moments to shine. First up, we have Shusui. This sword is kind of a workhorse, solid area of effect attacks, good mobility, And the best part? It is fairly easy to get. If you're around the mid-game, Shisui can absolutely carry you through a lot of content. The only catch is that as you move toward late game, the shiny new swords will definitely outscale it. Still, for what it is, Shisui is a real MVP for mid-game players. Now, talking about Maki. Maki is interesting. It offers really good total damage per second for a mid-game sword, which makes it super tempting. The downside, it is relatively hard to get your hands on. If you manage to grab it though, you are going to feel the power spike instantly. It just requires a little patience, or a lot, depending on your luck. Moving on to Stark. This sword brings solid damage per second and has great range, which is always a win. However, it is very hard to get, so prepare yourself for a grind. And a small warning, Stark's Z move actually requires aim. Yep, you heard me. No brainless button smashing here. You need to land your hits like a pro to get the full value out of it. And finally, let's talk about Rengoku and Grimmjow. Rengoku deals solid damage, but here is the kicker. It only has 2 moves. In a game where other swords can practically spam the screen with attacks, 2 moves feel kinda sad. Plus, Rengoku is currently unobtainable, which makes it even less appealing. Grimmjow, on the other hand, was hands down the best early game sword in verse piece. But time does not stand still. Mid-game swords have totally outscaled it, and yep, Grimmjow is also unobtainable now. So if you missed the train, you missed it. No takebacks. The swords in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Zenitsu, Virgil, Kokushibo, Sid Kaganu, Anubis, and Ichigo. You ever feel like picking a sword in verse piece is like trying to pick your favorite snack at a giant buffet? You know there are so many good ones, but some just hit different once you get to the late game. Let's dive right into the A tier swords and talk about why these beauties deserve your attention. First up, we have Zenitsu's sword. This one is absolutely cracked once you hit the late game. The mobility, top tier. The crowd control, insane. The only real catch is, it is incredibly hard to get your hands on, and while the sword shines in one-on-one fights, its area of effect capabilities are not as crazy as some other late game monsters. Still, when you finally unlock Zenitsu's sword, it feels like you just pulled the rarest loot in the game. Now, Virgil's sword, oh man, if you love watching big flashy numbers and crazy screen wipes, this one is for you. It is one of the best late game swords out there with absolutely bonkers area of effect damage per second. The downside, some of the moves do have long channel times, meaning you are standing there like a sitting duck if you are not careful. Also, just like Zenitsu's, it can be a real pain to get, but totally worth it once you do. Speaking of pain, Kokushibo's sword also enters the chat. This beast of a sword is another late game champion with insane area of effect damage per second. But man, good luck getting it. It is very hard to obtain. Plus, compared to some of the other top tier swords, its range is a little bit shorter, which can get a bit annoying if you are used to swinging from downtown. Now, if you want something solid without signing away your soul to the grind gods, Sid Kaganu's sword is your friend. It has good range, good damage, and pretty good area of effect. Plus, it is relatively easy to get compared to the others. It is also required if you want to upgrade to the CV2 sword later, which, spoiler alert, is absolutely overpowered in endgame. Just keep in mind that when you stack Sid Kaganu's sword next to the true heavy hitters, it falls behind pretty hard. And finally, shout out to Anubis and Ichigo Zangetsu. These two are the budget kings of late game swords. Anubis offers good range, mobility, and area of effect, and Ichigo Zangetsu is one of the easiest late game swords to snag. Both can definitely carry you if you play smart. But let's be real, when you compare them to the real endgame beasts, they are outclassed by quite a mile. Still, not every sword needs to be S tier to be a good time, right? The swords in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Stark LL, Alucard, Toji Unleashed, Red Mist, Butterfiles, and Chahan. You ever feel like you're just one sword away from absolute domination? Yeah, me too. And today we're diving into the real heavy hitters, the ones sitting up there in the S tier, just flexing on everyone else. First up, we have Stark LL. This one brings some serious crowd control and the damage is pretty solid too. Honestly, it is a great pick if you are into player versus player battles. The downside, it does not have a ton of area of effect power, and getting your hands on it is no walk in the park. Plus, when you stack it up against the absolute best swords at the endgame, the damage feels just a little bit underwhelming. Next on the list is Alucard. If you are the kind of player who likes to play it safe, you are going to love the passive healing. It works great in both player versus environment and player versus player modes. Alucard also has some amazing range and area of effect abilities, but let's be honest, if you are already rocking full maxed out gear, that healing is not going to save you from a bad fight. And just like Stark LL, the damage does not quite match up to the top tier monsters out there, and yeah, good luck pulling it. Moving on, we have Toji Unleashed. If you love speed and hitting like a truck, this one is definitely calling your name. It offers crazy good mobility and solid damage. However, the area of effect is kind of limited, and again, I hate to sound like a broken record, the damage, while great, still falls a bit short compared to the absolute gods of endgame swords. Oh, and surprise, it is also pretty difficult to get your hands on. Now let's talk about Red Mist. I actually really like this one. The F ability here gives a buff that even applies to your special abilities, which is just awesome. Plus, compared to a lot of endgame swords, Red Mist is actually not that bad to farm. The area of effect is fantastic too. The only thing holding it back is that, yep, the raw damage output still cannot quite hang with the best of the best. Up next, we have Butterflies. This sword has absolutely ridiculous range, and once you pop that F ability, the damage boost is just insane. It is super satisfying to land your hits. That being said, you really do need to have good aim to get the most out of it. And just like a few others we have talked about, the damage without the buff is a little disappointing. Plus, hope you like grinding dungeons, because you are going to be doing a lot of that to snag this beauty. And finally, we have Charhain. Compared to most swords in Verse Peace, Charhain is actually pretty strong. It has solid stats across the board: damage, area of effect, mobility, you name it. But when you put it side by side with other endgame swords, yeah, it kind of falls apart. It is probably one of the weakest options at that high level. And to make it even worse, it is insanely hard to get. Like, question your life choices hard. The swords in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right: Crimson Cutter, Emiya, Songjin Woo, Sid Kagenu V2, Yorichi, Rowan, and Lancer. You ever swing a sword so hard in Verse Peace that you wonder if you just reprogrammed the server? Yeah, same. Let's dive into the absolute monsters of the S+ tier swords, where every swing feels like a mini earthquake. First up, we have the Crimson Cutter. Honestly, this sword is an underrated gem. Most of its moves have really good area of effect, and the cooldowns are low enough that you can just keep slashing non-stop. Plus, your basic attacks even apply bleed automatically, which is just free extra damage. The only downside, its total damage is a bit less compared to heavy hitters like Emiya, but honestly, you will not even notice because everything around you will already be half dead. Speaking of Emiya, this sword is just a pure flex. It is straight up the best sword in all of Verse Peace. Every single move hits like a truck, and the range is so good you barely have to aim. The catch? Well, compared to some other S+ tier swords, the area of effect is not as wide, but who cares when enemies are evaporating the second you tap a button? Now, let's talk about Songjin Woo. Imagine swinging your sword and feeling like an entire army just got wiped out. That is the Songjin Woo experience. The area of effect and damage on every move are absolutely cracked. Plus, you get to summon Igris, who is fantastic at pulling enemy attention while you go full beast mode. The only tiny complaints are that the total damage falls a little short compared to some ultimate swords, and some of the moves have these super long channel times where you are just standing there, menacingly. CD Kagenu version 2 is up next. If you like throwing out tons of big flashy moves, you are going to love this sword. It has really good area of effect, solid damage, and it comes with 5 different damaging abilities, which is a lot. Also, it is relatively easy to get compared to others in this tier. The only problem is those long dramatic casting animations. By the time you finish posing, your enemies might have just left the server. Of course, we cannot forget about Yorichi. This sword is legendary for a reason. It brings crazy good mobility, insane damage, and an area of effect that makes you feel like you are painting the whole screen with destruction. The issue? Good luck getting your hands on it. It is nearly impossible to obtain, and a few of the newer swords have slightly outclassed it in raw stats. Rowan is another beast in the S+ tier. Huge area of effect, excellent damage, basically everything you want if you love clearing rooms in seconds. But just like Yorichi, getting Rowan is a nightmare. Think of it like winning the lottery, but instead of money, you win pure destruction power. Finally, we have Lancer. Honestly, it is one of the smoothest swords to use. It delivers fantastic damage, excellent range, and the animations are so quick that it feels like you are dancing through enemies. The bad news? It is extremely hard to get, but if you do manage to grab it, you are basically unstoppable. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.